Well, it's no secret the retail sector has been particularly hit hard during this pandemic. Nearly 15,000 stores closed last year alone, leaving about 52 million square feet of shopping center retail space empty. But a new report out from Cushman Wakefield says we are on the cusp of a golden era in retail. Let's bring in Barrie Scardina. She is America's head of retail at Cushman Wakefield. Barrie, it's good to talk to you today. We have heard so much about the doom and gloom of retail. So give us some positive here. When you talk about the sector being on the cusp of a boom, what are you seeing that points to that optimism?
Thanks so much for having me today, and it's so great to be on and be able to talk about some positive news. So as we look at what's been going on over the past few months, especially during the first quarter, we see some great signs of economic improvement and improvement in the retail space. Clearly, we know consumer confidence is building, and we know with the vaccines that consumers are excited to get out and to be part of their communities again. We also know that consumers have been saving, and savings are hitting a record high. And so with all of these, compounded with great stimulus packages that have been released, consumers are primed to spend. As we look at our brokerage professionals, we see across the country that the recovery is very different by geography, but we know in the Sun Belt and in the Midwest, consumers are coming out, retailers are looking for space, and landlords are positioned for great deals. On the coast, cities are returning. It's definitely slower. But again, landlords and retailers are working together because we know how important it is to get everyone back out shopping, improve the economy, and get people employed by restaurants and retail back to work.
Yeah, Barrie, I mean, when we talk about getting back out shopping, the unevenness in this recovery is one thing that's always pretty staggering to stack up. I mean, everyone who hadn't been able to go to restaurants and dine, you don't need to convince them to get back out there and maybe stop eating the food they're cooking at home. But when you look at some of these other sectors, apparel, still not fully recovered, one of those few ones that really hasn't. Talk to me about maybe how the unevenness in this recovery is likely to continue, especially if people just don't need to go out and get the clothes they would have normally been buying to wear to the office.
For sure that the pandemic changed the way we shopped, and we turned to e-commerce to fulfill a lot of different needs. And we saw that over time. And we are definitely going to see apparel, accessories, and footwear lag among some of the other trending categories. But retailers and landlords are being very savvy about how they mix their products within their centers. And so areas like food and beverage are explosive. And whether that's grocery, restaurants, quick service, drive-through restaurants or food halls, we're seeing strong recovery there. We're also seeing within the apparel sector, strong recovery in athleisure. So if you think about the Lululemons and Athletas of the world, we're all, very focused on fitness right now. We've been home and we've been buying those clothes and we'll continue to do so. We'll see anything related to home do-it-yourself. Furnishings is really strong. I know if you're trying to get a sofa right now, it can be really frustrating. And then anything around value, so dollar stores, outlet centers, anything that has great mass appeal and value has been really important and will continue to be important. We'll see the other categories, recover over time. But the one thing that's great about retail is it's transformative, and the people who work in this industry know how to transform.
I mean, you talk about the good deals in place for those seeking a lease, but 52 million square feet of empty space. That is a lot if we're talking about the shopping centers out there. To what extent do you think those empty spaces get filled by retailers again? And then how much of that is about the alternative use cases we've seen of especially these large footprints with department stores, whether it's putting a school in there, putting a fulfillment center in there? What do you see on that front?
That's a great point and a great question. We are definitely seeing mixed use. The return of retail is part of it. But really, when you think about these big boxes, we are looking at everything from senior citizen centers to schools. There's been conversation about, will industrial be part of the landscape going forward? Multifamily housing, office spaces in suburban areas. It's hard to know how this is going to land in terms of mix or what percentage, but what I think is great is that people are being creative. They know that they've got to make use of this space, It's going to take time, but I think we're going to see great results, and that will drive engagement. I think one of the things that's so interesting as we think about malls is we're really shifting our focus away from dollars per square foot across every component of the mall and really thinking about places where people can gather and just have a resting moment, whether it's indoors or in a green space. And so all of that is going to change the landscape of how we interact with these communities and these centers.
Yeah, Barrie, I mean, as much as we opened the segment talking about closures, interesting to see some of these big names that you might know investing in growth expansion plans, 7-Eleven being one of those that stands out in your guys' report. I know you mentioned quick service restaurants also enjoying this. Talk to me about maybe the rate of expansion in that investment and if it's really started to take off here now that we've kind of moved further along in this recovery.
We are seeing retailers in a very strategic way go after opportunities. There's opportunities in suburbs and in cities. There are great rent deals to be had. There are great lease terms going on right now. It's a good time for landlords and tenants to work together. And we've seen explosion around restaurants, convenience stores, grocery. 7-Eleven is a big one. We're also seeing growth across value, things like Five Below, the dollar stores. And we think it's going to be a very strong second half of this year into 2022.
And Barrie, when you think about what the discussion was in retail pre-COVID, so much of it was about building this experience for consumers so you can sort of marry the physical presence with the online presence. It feels like a big chunk of that has moved to digital strategy. To what extent is experience, you think, important still if you think about how things are going to look post-COVID in the sector?
Experience is very important. As I say all the time, we've been ordering everything from toilet paper to our Peloton bikes online, and there needs to be a reason to go to these centers. There needs to be a reason for brands to exist. And I think they understand that more now than ever. And so whether it's experiential retail, the discovery of the camp store, or it's an experience within a center, great restaurants, a food hall, or it's anything from esports to concerts to cooking classes, I think landlords and retailers are being very smart and very strategic about how they expand and how they're going to re-engage their consumer. And they're going to do it in a very holistic way. So e-commerce is definitely part of the conversation, as are marketplaces and social media. And great brands are going to bring all of that together for the best experience. We know today from our studies that while e-commerce surged while we were home, it will level off to be somewhere between 20 and 25% of our total business. That means 75% of business will still be done in brick and mortar stores, and those stores need to have a great customer experience. And retailers know that, and they're excited about those opportunities and those challenges.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those customers are excited just to get back out there and have a chance to interact with anybody at all, whether it is in apparel or some of these other sectors we're talking about. But Barrie Scardina, America's head of retail at Cushman Wakefield, appreciate you joining us and walking through all the latest data you guys have. Be well.